Hello, and welcome to ConTinual, the never-ending convention. My name is Jean Marie Ward, and I will be your host this evening for this edition of Hot Off the Press. And with me tonight are 5 wonderful writers with 5 new releases you want to know about. Dahlia Rose, Jackie North, Andy Gallo, Jason Gilbert, and Nancy Northcott. Welcome, everybody. Okay, first up, I'm going to let y'all introduce yourselves. Take it away, Nancy. Who are you and what are you here to tell us about today?
I'm Nancy Northcott. I write the historical fantasy Boar King's Honor trilogy for Falstaff Books, which is what I'll be talking about tonight. With Jeannie Adams, I co-write the Outcast Station science fiction mystery series, and I also write several subgenres of romance.
Cool. Andy, what about you?
So I'm Andy Gallo. I write right now under Andy Gallo. I write contemporary male romance. The series that we're doing right now is Harrison Campus, which is 4 books and a novella. I also write science fiction fantasy under Andrew Q. Gordon. And that's about it.
Okay, cool. Dahlia?
I'm Dahlia Rose, and I write contemporary historical paranormal, true crime, thrillers. I do a lot of genres. I'm a USA Today bestselling author. I have my first book contracted with Hallmark for Christmas, and that will be out October 19th of this year. And we are hoping that we get to see it in movie option very soon because that's part of the contract. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, definitely fingers crossed. I mean, I am a big Hallmark and
Yes.
Hallmark movie channel junkie myself. So yeah, big fingers crossed. Jason, how can you compete with that? Jason? Oh, well, you're on.
I am having tech issues.
Okay.
My Bluetooth has just turned off for some reason. So give me a second and then I will be. Hi, I'm Jason Gilbert. I write the Cold Stone Files. I have new books out and stuff. They're from Falstaff. Go to Amazon and buy them.
Okay, I'll put you on hold for a little bit longer. So, okay, Jackie.
Hi, it's nice to be here. Gail Martin offered me an invitation, and she's done so much for the community that I'm in. So I said yes. I write male romance specifically. I've written some time travel romances where the cute guy goes back into the past and falls in love with the cute old-fashioned guy. And then I started writing cowboy romances, cowboy romances, and they're all set on a ranch, which in book 2 of the time travel series, the guy, Laurie Quinn, disappears. And a reader asked me, he said, well, what will happen to the ranch if everybody disappears? Or if he disappears, well, the police will come and the FBI comes and their ratings fall off. And I'm like, well, shoot, I need to write that story, how the ranch got back on its feet. And of course, it's got to be a romance. And so we have, the ranch hand and the single dad and the foreman and the drifter and all these combinations. One that's just coming out now is the blacksmith and the ex-con. And by this time, the ranch is starting to get back on its feet. It's a whole lot of fun to write. And of course, the research is one giant rabbit hole, which I very much enjoy.
Well, there's, nothing better than research. Okay. That sort of gets into the first question I was going to ask of, what is the story that you're, that's coming out now? And how did you, where did the idea come up with, where did the idea come from to write this particular story and the series as a whole? Jackie?
Right. Me, do you want me to continue or I?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay.
Because you were segging into it kind of naturally.
Oh, all right. So I wrote this book called Honey from the Lion. And in it, Laurie Quinn goes on vacation to a dude ranch because he's tired of computer life. He works in the computer industry, which I did at the time. And it was just very exhausting and very high pressure. And a lot of people thrive. And I had some, great bosses and the work wasn't crappy. I'm not saying that, but it just was too much. So I thought I'd love to go to a dude ranch. Well, why don't I write his story? So he goes back in time, falls in love, of course, and a bunch of things happen, and he remains gone. And the reader wrote me and said, what happens? What happens to this ghost story they told? What happens to the ranch that they were on? And I said, I don't know. And I started thinking about it, and this is what came out. So it's a 6-book series called the Farthingdale Ranch series. And I got the covers already, and all I have to do is write the dang things. And book 1 came out, and very romantic. We're talking Hallmark meets Brokeback Mountain, basically. Very sweet, very, not a lot of steam, but a lot of dancing under the stars and the stars. And then the second one is The Blacksmith and the Ex-Con. A little more gritty because he's a blacksmith, so he's in the shop and everything's dirty. And there's lots of fun things that go on when they're not in the shop, but I can't talk about that because that's PG. But it is romantic, and I talk about in the story how love is sometimes a grilled cheese sandwich. You know, it's not always passion and fervor. It's taking care of someone else. The ex-con comes out of prison and he's kind of messed up because his mother died, and the blacksmith sort of comes out of his own shell to take care of another person, and from there love grows. So my stories are like that. They're not super steamy. They're not, you know, if steam is 1 flame to 5, I would always say it's a 3 or less. So it's like a Hallmark in that way. And it's a lot of fun to write. I really enjoy it.
Cool. Jason, are you with us now?
I am, and I just sent you a chat.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Let me basically turn that person off.
We can hear you now, Jason, just fine.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
Yeah, so, okay, well, I think Jim is going to have some interesting edits because of that. We had 2 of you for a while.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So, could you, before we get started on the next part of the, with this, yeah, settle back in. Okay, let's pick it up now. Okay, Jason, tell us a bit about, it's the Coldstone Files, right?
Yep. So it's the about the son of the Wolfman, James Coldstone. He investigates crime, and his best friend tends to beat him with a rolled newspaper when he's been a bad dog.
So what was the genesis of this series, and how does the new book play into that?
Harkness has the Quincy Harker series, and
John
quite a few
Harkness,
of his, John Harkness, and quite a few of his authors have written in the Harkerverse. They've got monsters, you know, stories about monsters based off of the Universal monsters, which is really where Harker is kind of focused. And I've always been more of a werewolf guy. So I was like, well, I'll do the Wolfman, and, you know, and I asked him about it, and come to find out, the Wolfman is one of Universal's like most protected licenses. So obviously we couldn't do that. So I went ahead and wrote it out, and he enjoyed it. He said, you know, take it out of Wales, put it in the US, and take it out of the Harkerverse. So I was like, okay, cool, no problem. And it's been kicking along ever since. I watch a lot of shows like Psych and Supernatural, so it's kind of got that vibe to it, and Criminal Minds, so you can kind of see a little bit of that procedural element to it, but it's more focused on the whole buddy cop thing. And it's James Coldstone lives in Rock Hill, South Carolina, and can turn to a werewolf at will, and he ends up getting caught up in investigating a human trafficking ring. The newest book that just came out, book 4, is the end of this series, of this season's arc. That takes place on Westenra Island. It's a fictional island. It's off the coast of Miami. And we get to finish off what James started in the first book. And then we start to see some lead in to season 2, which I'm working on right now.
Okay, cool. Nancy, I believe the series is called The Boar King's Honor. Is it not?
That's correct.
And how did this series come about, and how does the current book play into that? Is it like Jason's, the capstone of a season's arc, or a complete arc?
It's a complete arc. when I was in my early 20s, I was introduced to the controversy surrounding Richard III and his reputation. And for anybody who's watching and doesn't know, he was accused of doing a lot of things to well, essentially murder his way to the throne. And he was accused of killing the young sons of his brother, Edward IV, who couldn't inherit the throne because Edward played around and his marriage was declared bigamous. And that whole thing is a panel in itself. So to put it simply, one of the ancestors of the family who moved through the trilogy helped another person murder these boys. And when he realized what had happened, because he didn't know that was what was going to happen, he threw himself on the king's mercy. The king said, the political situation is tough. Keep quiet till I tell you to speak. And then King Richard went off to Bosworth Field and died without ever doing that. And so the dynasty that came next had reasons to vilify him. And for this person to speak up, it would have been treason, it would have been death. And so he was so riddled by guilt that he cursed his whole family line to not rest in life or death until the king's name was cleared. And it's only the heirs, it's not like everybody in the family, but it's everybody who inherits the earldom's title that he has. So the effort to lift the family curse is a thread that runs through every book in the trilogy. So that's one element of it. And then the characters in each book have a different big problem to solve. In The Herald of Day, the first book, the villain had changed history in order to create a dictatorship of the Mageborn, and they were trying to restore the true timeline. In this book, Napoleon Bonaparte has escaped from Elba. The French are flocking to his standard, they think because of a magical artifact they believe to be in his possession. And so the heroine, who's a seer, and the hero, who's a wizard spy, have to find and steal that artifact to stop Napoleon. And I sympathize with Jackie's comment about going down the rabbit hole, because this book climaxes at the Battle of Waterloo. That's the big finish. Wow. And as you all are probably aware, there have been enough books written about the Battle of Waterloo to fill an entire library, possibly with double and even triple shelving. And I really got sucked into that rabbit hole and fascinated by it. But in the end, as you always have to, I picked and chose the parts that worked for the book. And so that's the complete arc in this book. The family curse carries over to the third and final book. And it's called The Boar King's Honor because Richard III used a white boar as his emblem. So that's in a nutshell what I could go on a soapbox about.
I think we could all go on a soapbox of about our particular series, and a nice one too. Andy, what about you? What is the current work part of a series? And if so, what role does it play? How did you come to write the book, the series?
So the series started, 10 years ago. And the first 3 books in the series I co-wrote with Anita Sunday. We originally wrote the first book for a contest and it won. And then we kind of sat on it I went on and did fantasy as Andrew Q. Gordon. She went on and did Great Things as Anita Sunday, and it sat. And so about 2 years ago, maybe, we started talking about maybe reviving it and finishing it and expanding it. And so that's where so we rewrote book 1, which is Better Be Sure. And it's on this mythical campus that we created, which kind of amalgamation of a bunch of things I grew up around. And so we wrote book 1, and it was interesting because when we rewrote book 1, it was so 10 years ago. And it still kept a lot of those elements because romance has sort of moved into the romancing the beats kind of formula. And you have like the dual point of views, and you have like the structure that goes through it. When we wrote that one, there was more of a literary vibe to these books. And so the first book has, major subplots with other characters. So the main characters are gay, but they're one character's brother, there's his romance, which is a subplot. And then the main character's best friend, she finds romance. And so we had all these things we had to tie up in that one. And then we moved into book 2, it was 10 years later. So we put into the whole romancing the beats kind of format. And so we did 2 and then 3. And this 4th book is mine alone because Anita is doing, I'm allowed to give shout outs to somebody else, right?
You're allowed to give shout outs. Okay. Yes, sir.
Because she's doing this wonderful series, which is basically rewriting Jane Austen into a modern day in New Zealand. So it's very kind of cool. But she had a lot of work to do with that. So I wrote book 4 by myself. And so book 4 is probably the last in the series, although I think some of the characters will make appearances in a spin-off series, which will kind of age up all the characters off the college campus and into working career.
Okay, very cool, very cool. Dahlia, okay, this is the book that you're here to talk about today. The one you mentioned that's for Hallmark, or is it something else?
This is something else. I went back home to Barbados last year in February before everything started happening. And so there I really went into the history, and my husband went with me, and we found out that through his Scottish heritage that his people came through Barbados and the islands, which sent me, like everyone else, down a rabbit hole of research. And so then I found out about pirates and Scottish pirates and how they used to use the islands, and the combination of Caribbean folklore and Highlands folklore. So this is my Caribbean Highland series. The first book was his Highland Queen, where my heroine was a free woman and she owned a plantation in Barbados. And my second book was his Scottish Rogue, and it goes into the pirate aspect of using the island chains and how they utilize the chains to actually circumvent having to pay taxes or, steal from the actual crown. So there's a lot of folklore and a lot of Barbados in there, and a lot of my whole heritage mixed in with Scottish lore. And they really seem, readers love it. And I think I gave it a different aspect of it, because it's not just people think Pirates of the Caribbean is it. And the Caribbean is much more than Pirates of the Caribbean. And there's intrigue, there's danger, there's caves, there's a pirate chain that ran from Nassau Strait through the West Indies, Barbados, straight to St. Lucia, St. Vincent, all of these islands. So I try to integrate all of that into the series. And so the book that was released was his Scottish Rogue, and that really delved into the whole pirate chain. And the third book that will be coming up soon will be going back into the whole Scottish realm, and then dipping back and arcing back over to Barbados.
So is his Scottish Rogue the one that you're talking about today? Or is
Yep.
it?
Yep,
Okay.
that's the one I'm talking about today.
Okay, cool. Since you and Nancy both mentioned research, I'm gonna go off in that direction. And basically, what were some of the rabbit holes you went down for his Scottish Rogue, even more than the first book in the series? And what surprised you most about the research?
I'm I'm a fan of research. My office is filled with research books. And while in Barbados, I was able to buy, people come home with trinkets and little sand and, and all that stuff. I came home with my luggage filled with books. So I found a lot of, historical books that we were able to trace the lines through and see which, like the McPherson clan going through Barbados became pirates. And then there were actually other people that came to me and said, hey, my family went through Barbados. Do you think you can find them? So then that was the rabbit holes that I went down into, and how they used some of the cave systems in Barbados to, hide treasure that they stole. And one particular part was Sam Lord's Castle, which sits on the cliffs of Barbados. He actually used to lure British ships to the cliffs using the light, and they thought that it was, the port, and that was the lighthouse. But he actually used to lure them into the rocks, get them,
like the Cornwall Wreckers.
Yeah, and then he would steal everything, and he would kill them, and then he would sink the ship. So I used a lot of that into the research as well. And I mean, tracing my husband's family from Scotland, and knowing that there were indentured servants sent to the islands. And that was a whole lot of the aspects that came in, that a lot of Scottish people were sent to the islands as indentured servants. And so it really gave like a whole overall view of what was going on and why we have a tartan for Barbados that's actually in the Scottish Guild of Tartans, that is our Barbados colors, and why we have a Highland Games. And I always grew up wondering, why are all these men wearing skirts? Now I know.
I really think that you are a sister to that Nancy Northcott never knew she had, because Nancy is famous for going on research trips and coming home with more books than she has suitcases.
Nancy,
So,
we're sisters.
yes. So I know that this particular book in the series had some rather interesting research challenges, because isn't the Regency possibly the most over-researched period in history, Nancy?
I don't know that I would say that, but it is a period that has legions of fans who are absolutely rabid about it. It's a period of elaborate social customs. And I've read a bunch of Regency romances. I enjoy them, but reading it and writing it are two different things. And I need to give a shout out to Teresa Desjardins, who has a book coming out called Jane Austen. I believe it's Jane Austen Shopped Here. Patricia Rice and Jerry Russell, all of whom helped me with my Regency research. And of course, any mistakes are my own. But that was the terrifying part, because those people are so well informed and they are so avid about it that I did take some liberties. There's a lot of bowing and curtsying, and I cut out some of that just so the story could be moving along. But, there were things that I just never sat down and thought about as a reader. And as a writer, you've got to think about it, because you've got to make that world come alive. Mm-hmm. And so the other thing that was intimidating was the Battle of Waterloo. Mm-hmm. I mean, you all have probably seen people who cosplay military units from the Battle of Waterloo. They're reenactors. They take this seriously too. They know a lot about it. Mm-hmm. And I was surprised to discover, as I got into the reading, that there was not unanimity about what was important at the end of the battle. Mm-hmm. And the nice thing about it being fiction is you just pick what works. Yeah. You take what's going to fit your story and you do what works. But I read a lot about the Battle of Waterloo, and there's a wonderful book, Dancing into Battle, by Nick Folks, that is a portrait of the British expat community in Brussels, because it was party hardy time between Napoleon's 1814 abdication and the time the French army marched over the border in 1815. Mm-hmm. So that was a big help, because I've never been to Brussels. I mean, if I'm lucky, maybe someday I'll get to go, but I haven't been there. So those were the two things that really kind of sucked me in, and I'm still fascinated by Waterloo. I found out that it seemed to me, as I read about the battle, that the Prussian army made two contributions that were critical to the outcome of the battle. Mm-hmm. And so I decided to use those, but other people don't rate those as highly. So it just kind of depends on how you look at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you have to add to that, Bridgerton has opened up a whole new door to historical again. Historical romance had died out a little bit, and then Netflix gave us Bridgerton, and now everyone is just grabbing at it as much as they can, and they want more and they want more. And so it's had a resurgence that is really fascinating to see, because I mean, kids now that are like 18 or 19 are trying to find those old paperbacks with Victorian and Regency romance, and it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, hey, you can't beat the clothing. That's what can I say? Yes. One could practically set, oh God, what was it called? It wasn't Farscape. It was the one with Captain Tight Pants. The guy,
Firefly?
Nathan Fillion.
Firefly?
Firefly. Yeah. I knew it was an F. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Every time I saw those pants, I went, yeah, they stitched you into those, didn't they?
That didn't sound creepy at all.
No, not at all.
Not at all.
Jason, what kind, you're talking about made up islands off the coast of, Florida.
That's just book 4.
Yeah. What kind of research did you do for this particular title? And I didn't catch that again. this particular one called?
This one is called Wolfheart.
Wolfheart?
Yeah, Wolfheart. This
Okay.
wraps up season 4. So one of the things I was going for with Cold Stone Files is everything takes place in real areas you've been to. So for example, if you come to Rock Hill and you drive through downtown, you'll pick up right away that James lives in Anderson Apartments in downtown. If you go to Charleston, he visits all of the market. He's staying at the Meeting Street Inn. He's walking on the Battery. He goes to one of the frat houses down by the university. These are all locations that you've been to. So with book 4, with the way things are going, I wanted to take it to an island off the coast of Florida that no one had heard of, that was very exclusive and very private. And it's Westenra Island, which is a nod to Bram Stoker's Dracula and Lucy Westenra.
Yeah.
So book 4 is the only one of the series that takes place in a place that doesn't exist. So, and it's a man-made island. So I had to do a little research about how that, goes about. Most of my research went into, outside of Rock Hill, because that's where I live, mapping out these places and where they would go and making sure that those locations were accurate. So if somebody who's been there or somebody who lives there is reading these books, they go, oh, I know that place. I've been there before, and so on and so forth. The other aspect was child trafficking. That was not fun to research. I've seen some shit. And so I had to, while the series does have that comedic edge, there still is that real undertone of how that actually works. There is a point in the series early on where Philip tells James, there's a really high likelihood that this is not going to work. So that in and of itself is a rabbit hole that I had to kind of keep myself out of, just from becoming really depressed. But there was also for book 4, I had to look at maritime law and how that works. Andy, I'm sure you probably can speak a little bit to maritime law, as far as that it's just a complete cluster. It's a complete cluster. Once you're 20 miles off the coast of Florida, it's literally within like a mile or two of who does this section of water belong to, who has jurisdiction here or there. And the thing with traffickers is, if they go outside of U.S. jurisdiction, sorry, done. There's nothing you can really do about that, not unless you're willing to involve other countries. And that's on the likelihood that's on whether or not they want to spend their resources on that. So it's difficult, because what's the longitude and latitude? Where's the ship? Is there a ship? So those are some of the things that James kind of has to have in the back of his mind in book 4, when he's tracked everything down to this place for the final battle. It's a question of whether or not that final battle will even happen.
Yeah. Well, maritime law has been interesting from a plot standpoint for a long time. I'm thinking of all of those movies and books that depend on the fact that you can sell alcohol 5 miles offshore, for, prohibition. So yeah, that was my introduction to what, who, what, how.
Yeah. And it's surprising how off a lot of those movies and books are, and how unintentionally accurate they can be, because again, it's water. How do you map that and say, okay, if you come into this water, this section of water is my jurisdiction and you can't do any damn thing. So yeah, it's like I said, once you're 20 miles off the coast, it is a crapshoot as to who can do what. If you're in the wrong spot, Coast Guard might not be able to come and help you. Then what? You got nothing. So that was, even with the trafficking, some of the trafficking research I had to do, which was heinous. That was one of the scarier things, I think, was that, if you were to get into a fishing boat and lose track of where you were and something goes down, there's a 50-50 shot and you might be screwed to the wall and have to figure it out on your own.
Especially in a storm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Jackie, could you refresh our memory of the title of your current work? And was there any special? I lost. Are you there?
I am there. It's gotten awfully dark because I don't have any lights on. Hang on.
Sure.
Hang on. Sorry.
See, let me get you a ring light, girl.
I sure do. You all have one, and I notice how bright you are.
I don't. I actually have this simple little sunbeam LED desk lamp, and it's been great.
There.
Yeah, I'm just using my desk lamp as well.
Yeah.
Sorry. All right. So the name of my little book is called The Blacksmith and the Ex-Con. And my goal is to have characters be in a situation like a ranch, but isolated by themselves. And it's not as easy as it sounds, because you want them to, it's called forced intimacy or isolation 24/7. You want them off on their own to fall in love, basically, without interference. My research consisted of watching a whole lot of videos on YouTube about ranches. You enter guest ranch and you get 100 guest ranches, hundreds of tapes and hours. And I saved them all. And then I started looking, I thought, well, maybe I'll just go to one. These places cost $500 a night. I had no idea. So hence my little ranch, they're at half booking. They can't afford everything. So they have to cut back on staff. And that makes them not be able to charge as much, even more. So I had no idea. If you go to like a little local place, that's one thing. But these places in Idaho and Montana, and they have these beautiful horses galloping across, it's $500 a night. And of course, everything's taken care of, and it's very glamorous looking. Some places will even film you the entire vacation so that you can have a memory to take home with you. So there's lots of, I said no. And then Road Scholar has one. I think I could even afford it. But by the time I can arrange it, during the current unpleasantness, of course, they're not having this particular vacation. So I'm all into cowboys now, and ranch cookouts and horses and all kinds of stuff. And it's bringing back memories. When you're a kid, you thought cowboys were cool. They are, and they're totally fun to write about.
Yes, and the horses are cool too, unless you have to clean up after them.
Yes,
or curry them or feed them.
Well, see, in my world, chores make kind of an environment where you can relax into the rhythm of the day. There's no computers to pull you out if you're dusting or cleaning. I find it very soothing. And so my beta readers are like, not so many chores. I'm like, but they have to do chores because they're working together, right? And when you work with someone, you get to know them, especially in an environment like this. So one guy has to rake the corral every time the trail ride comes through. And I don't get into the details. I focus on him and the work and the sweat on his brow and his marvelous hair. And, I make it sound fun. And people are like, that does sound, I think I want to go to a guest ranch now. I'm like, yes, me too, but I can't afford it. Not a really nice one, where you don't have to do any work.
Well, the good thing about fiction is you can travel, not just in time, but in place. Right. And especially right now, that ability to open a book and be someplace else is particularly nice. Okay, Andy, again, give us the name of the book and what particular, since this was the one you were doing by yourself, was there any particular research that you weren't expecting to do that you suddenly had to do since you were working on your own?
So the name of the book is Better to Believe. It's book 4 of Harrison Campus. You know, one of the main characters wants to play pro baseball, which is semi-autobiographical because that was my dream when I was a
see.
kid.
You
This
still
is
got
my
that.
law. This is actually my law enforcement hat. I just didn't get it off today. And so I had that. You know, everybody has their little dreams when they're kids, and for me, playing pro ball was like, there was a line in I think it was Field of Dreams where the character playing Shoeless Joe Jackson says, "You get paid to play a kid's game." And at the time it seemed really great. Well, anyway, so the main character wants to go play pro ball, and I don't know how many people have studied the system, and I kind of knew it, and I thought I had a pretty good handle on it because, you know, I never actually got close to that, so I never had to look at it from a personal standpoint, like when I was 17, like trying to think about all this stuff. But there is like a whole system out there that I wasn't quite aware of, and so there's a whole bunch of stats in there about, like, basically at the end of the, you know, at some point, gets closer to the end, he starts evaluating, do I want to or do I not? And there are a whole bunch of stats that he starts reciting that I really didn't understand all of it until I started actually looking it up, like how many people were drafted after the 20th round that made it to the majors, how many people actually, you know, there's 750 players on the active roster, and how many different players were there in a league on any given year? Well, it's about 1,000 with injuries. So about a third of all players go out. And so you have another third that new ones pop up. And so just stuff like that I had vague ideas about, but I didn't really have the stats for. And as you know, as other people have said, sometimes if you don't put it down as accurate as can possible, you start hearing from readers saying, but. And so, but one of the more interesting things, and I'd seen it in the newspapers here, is that a lot of the minor league players end up like living with host families, because minor league players make about $2,000 a month, which is, you know, which is really low, right? You're talking 24, and you got to pay your agent from some of that. And then some of the teams are just really, you want to go to a developmental program, you have to pay for that out of your pocket. So what they end up doing, and you only get paid for the length of the season. Well, the minor league season, the longest minor league season ends September 1st. So you're talking April 1st to September 1st, which is what, 4 months? Maybe, you know, right, 5 months. And so you're looking at maybe $10,000 for the season. So what they do is they put these guys up with host families who, you know, it's sort of like, you know, like when you have, foreign exchange students. And so that was kind of interesting seeing how that worked out. And I'm like, yeah, I'm glad I never played.
Yeah, that does seem like a rabbit hole all of its own. Though I imagine that it's an aspect of playing pro ball of any kind that your readers weren't familiar with.
That's true. And you know,
go ahead.
I was just going to say that there's a big dichotomy between it. And if you ever watch the movie Bull Durham, you know, Kevin Costner's character says to Robbins, he says, look, you have $1 million arm. All my body parts together aren't worth, you know, $10. And essentially you have like these guys who sign their pro contracts out of high school and get millions. And then you get the guys who just make it in like the 30th round or the 28th round and get a contract with no signing bonus, or if they get a signing bonus, it's barely enough to get them from home to where it is. So there's a real dichotomy among the players, like who's got and who doesn't. So it was interesting.
Yeah, well, you would think though that top tier, that top 1,000 would have would make a decent living, but I guess not all.
So it's different. There are 3 distinct levels. There's A, AA, and AAA. When you get to AAA, you're essentially a replacement player for the major league team, and the major league salary I think is about $500,000 a year. And so every time you set foot in a major league game, you get paid scale for those games. So a lot of the guys who are in AAA actually have signed contracts, and they might actually be getting $1 million, $2 million, which in baseball terms is peanuts for a pro player. I know, right? Yeah. But they sign minor league contracts, but their pay is so much greater. But it's the guys who are in single A particularly who get nothing. And then AA by the time you get to AA, you've kind of weeded out you've weeded out a good portion of the first tier. And a lot of the people that are left are people that actually had signing bonuses. And if they were smart, they still had some of it left. But by the time you get to the third tier, pretty much if you've made the third tier, you've been to the major leagues at some point, and you are now just like their backup catcher in case one of them goes down. You're the sixth pitcher in case the fifth one goes down. And so you're like the ready-made replacement. And then you just keep playing to keep yourself sharp.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. What is, you've all been writers for some time. So there's not a newbie in the bunch, this group. What is, the one thing that has surprised you, what is the one thing that has surprised you most that you didn't expect to learn when you started this business? Andy, we'll start with you.
Wow, the one thing, huh? You want me to boil it down to one?
Well, you can give it a limited number because we do have a time thing.
No, here. I know. I didn't realize the extent of. I mean, I just thought you write your book, you put it out there, and it would sell or whatever. It's the marketing. It's right. It's the marketing aspect. It's how much time I spend, learning new things unrelated to actually writing the story. So if I take a writing class online, and I have taken some, and I have one I'm currently taking, that takes up a fair bit of time, but there's more to it than just that. There's the marketing, there's the formatting, there's all these other little things that you need to learn. Like I have to learn how to use vellum. I have to learn how to, figure out what the color schemes are for my covers or for my graphics. So it was a lot more than writing the book, finding somebody to edit it, finding somebody to do the cover, and then just putting it out there and just waiting to see people to buy it. And so for me, that was the biggest shocker of it all. I mean, I always expected that writing itself was going to be difficult and that I was going to need to continually improve my craft that way. I just didn't realize that every 6 months I'd have to learn a whole new marketing format because things have changed and someone changed an algorithm or they're changing platforms and you have to fix it all up again. So that was the biggest shock for me.
Okay. What about you, Dahlia? What is the most surprising thing you've learned that you never would have guessed when you were setting out on this journey?
I would have to, side with Andy here and say marketing, because I came into this business so innocent, and I think I'm still innocent. Andy, don't judge me. But
I've met you.
I came into this thinking that I could just write and I could see myself, like Jones Collins wearing my little robe and my mimosas, and I'm just typing away, and it is certainly not that. I wear a Doctor Who bathrobe and I wear pajamas most of the time, and if I comb my hair, it's okay. But marketing is one of the biggest things that I had to learn, is that my publishers can only market to a point, and I have to market myself as well as the book. So in 15 years, I think I've learned to market myself well, but then I figured I have to learn and evolve with the changing times, because there's TikTok, there's Instagram, there's all of these things that I don't know about that my kids keep talking about, and Snapchatting and all that good stuff. And I'm like, okay, well, I need to learn all of this. So I'm back at school again, and I'm learning digital marketing and social media, because I think that I need to catch up with all these people that are like, tinier than me, but know so much more than me. My 12-year-old can work a computer better than me at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So far I've been in for about 1.5 years, and I got certified in Facebook. I'm Facebook certified, and I'm Hootsuite certified, and I didn't even know Hootsuite was a thing to be certified for. And I was like, okay, I just post using like that to post everywhere. But then I got certified, and I found out that Hootsuite is analytics, is advertising. It can do so much more than just post to my Facebook and LinkedIn and my Twitter all at the same time. And I'm like, I am so behind. I feel very de-evolved learning this stuff. So I think marketing is the biggest part for me.
Okay. Nancy, what was the surprise for you?
Oh, me three. I was in the marching band in high school. You're looking at a person who could not sell toothbrushes in her hometown to benefit the marching band. And who doesn't need a toothbrush, for crying out loud? So sales and marketing do not come naturally to me. And those were the biggest thing, because as Dahlia said, your publisher can only do so much. And then after that, it's you. And so I'm learning about all this too. But in terms of the writing side of it, the thing that was the biggest learning, the biggest aha moment for me was realizing how all the pieces of a story fit together like a jigsaw puzzle. You know, the Steel Rose has 3 plot lines in it. There's the Curse plot line, there's the Napoleon Waterloo plot line, and there's a romance. And all of those have to fit together. They have to, everything has to push everything else. Not every single time. You know, you can have a scene that's just about this part of the plot or just about this part of the plot, but they have to mesh, and you have to see how this drives that further down the road. Because if you don't, then you're essentially writing 2 or 3 stories that are parallel and not one book. And so for me, I guess I knew that intuitively as a reader, but it's kind of like the Regency. When you sit down to do it as a writer, it's a whole different ballgame.
Yes, definitely. Okay. Jason, what about you? What was the most surprising thing?
Writing a book is a lot of fun until you have a publisher writing your ass like Seabiscuit. I am on rewrite. This is the 3rd time I've written this new book now. I wrote all 4 books of the first season and sent all of them to John. And then I had to go back and completely rewrite books 2 through 4. I wrote book 4 twice. So that was the biggest kind of shock to me as far as being under a publisher, was you don't realize you don't know how to write a book until you have that moment when you realize that you don't know how to write a book. And even though you may have published things before, in my case, it was self-pub. It was like, oh shit, I never thought about structuring things and whatnot. I was turned on to a book called Save the Cat that really helped as far as outlining and plotting and that kind of things. And I had that moment, was like, damn, that works. That actually works. As far as marketing goes, it's not the publisher's job to market you. It's their job to publish you. So they're going to market you very little. Generally, your bigger authors like Stephen King and whatnot, the publisher doesn't market them. They have publicists that do that. They've hired people to do that. So for indie authors like us, it is on us. And if you think about it, King and Stephanie Meyer and all them, they're really kind of doing it themselves because they had to go and hire people to do it. But that being said, it was kind of a shock to me how difficult marketing can be, because it's more than, I have no problem selling. I come from a long background of selling, but there's more to it than that. Going to con and pitching and, you know, having your pitch lines and slinging books, that's not enough. Just putting up the occasional ad on Facebook, that's not enough. You need to be able to have kind of a cycle going, a monthly thing going. So I'm also learning how to do that, beyond what I already do, because I'll be the first one to tell you I really suck at marketing. I'm not the one to ask for advice from on that. So I might actually tap Dahlia's brain at Con Carolinas about Hootsuite a bit, since she's all certified and whatnot. It's worth a beer to you, right?
It is worth a beer to me. Yes. Yes, it is.
But the biggest shock to me was having that moment where I realized that I didn't outline like I thought I did with the Clockworks of War series that I self-published. It was oh, I pantsed those and didn't even know it. This is how you make your roadmap, and this is how you tell a story, and this is how you structure it out. And it was pretty eye-opening. It wasn't until I got turned on to Save the Cat and learned the technique that I got from that book, the postcards technique, that I started feeling really good about the new book. So this third rewrite's going really well. And I attribute it to being able to taking the time to not write a single solitary word. I took a week, not one word went to a page. It was literally me in front of postcards and a notebook, making notes on what I wanted to happen, and then filling out those postcards and setting those scenes up so that when I started writing, I would be ready and I could just blow and go.
Cool, cool. Jackie, what about you? What is the most surprising thing you've learned in your publishing journey as a writer that you never imagined before you started it?
Well, when I was younger, like maybe some of us, I was writing a lot of fan fiction. And fan fiction is you write it, you put it up. If you write it, they will come because they are dying for more Starsky and Hutch. They want professionals. They want Star Trek. They want what they want, and they want it right now. They don't care if it's a hot mess. They will love you because you're giving them this soul touching need that they have. So when you become an indie publisher, it's kind of the same. Technically, you write it, you put it up yourself. You're doing everything you're on your own. But if you write it, they won't come because of the marketing thing. But at the same time, it's a very simple process. You write it, and if you have the readers, that's all they want. They don't want all these bells and whistles that we think they want, like fancy graphics. They just want that story, maybe a nice cover. And marketing will say, yes, you have to have a cover and a blurb and blah, blah, blah. But the readers just really want that story. In the end, that's what it's all about. And when you write, you make more money. And when you write the next book, that makes, that's what makes the money. Is just write more books, right? And it's you and the reader. Just keep doing the thing. And I think that's the heart of it. That took me a while to figure out. I think I might have figured it out this year.
Did anybody have that in there? I'm sorry, I don't mean to step on you, Jean Marie, but just kind of piggybacking on the surprise question you have, because it's a really good question. Did anybody else have that first time shock with your first series of, okay, I've got book 2 out now, book 1 did really well, and book 2 is out now, and book 2's not doing all that great, but book 1 is exploding?
Yep.
And then book 3 is out, and it's the end of the series. So now all 3 books are doing great, but book 1 is doing even better than it was when book 2 came out.
Yep.
That was something that I discovered with Clockworks of War, and then even with Cold Stone, which it is not over by a long shot. The more I put out, the more copies of book 1 moved.
That's the same thing. I have that with my Paladin Dragon series, and that has 10 books in the series so far, and I have the 11th that's supposed to come out in the fall. And number 1, every time I put out a new part of the series, I see number 1, the very first book, sell more than even the one that I put out now.
Yep.
And then you also have the readers just clamoring, like, when are you going to put out the last one? I get one of those emails every day, and I'm like, okay, I've got deadlines, and this is my own work, so I've got to put that on the sidelines for the deadline, and then I can go back to that. But you are absolutely right. Sometimes you're looking and you're like, oh, great, that first one is selling, the second one is going to sell, and then you look at it and you're like, what is going on? What's happening? Where are all the people that bought the first one? Come here and buy the second one.
So that is slightly different.
Third one.
I had a slightly different experience. I think romance, especially contemporary romance, is very tropey. And what I found is book 3 sells better than any of the bunch. because it was the trope, I guess, that the readers wanted. Now we'll see what happens with book 4, because it's sort of more of a popular trope, I guess, than some of the other ones. But book 3 has consistently, every time a new book comes out, book 3 sells. When we do giveaways and it's like backlist, people pick book 3 6-1 over anything else. So it's just, I mean, that was my surprise, which is sort of the exact opposite of yours, Jason, is that book 1, I always expected, you know, if you have 100 people that buy book 1, 80 will buy book 2. Of those 80, 64 will buy book 3, and so forth, and you move down the list. But I was shocked that I sold far more copies of book 3, and I still sell far more copies of book 3, which is Better to Believe. I'm sorry, Better Be True is the bestseller in the group, because it was a fake boyfriend series. Story.
Is it sexier?
No, they all have about the same heat level. The only thing I would say is that the novella has probably a higher heat level, only because there's about as much sex in a third of the pages. But book 3 is the trope that I think people really enjoyed. And so right now the 4th book is a brother's best friend, which seems to be a pretty hot topic. It wasn't when I wrote it, but
it's a really good genre now.
Right, exactly.
And I'm making a note to buy all 3 books, because I love reading Mill. Don't judge me.
I would never judge you. I look up to you. I might worship you, but I will not judge you, I promise.
Both Jackie and Andy write Mill. You've got plenty to choose from here.
Exactly. I'm going to be a happy girl.
Yes, indeed. Okay, we are just coming up on the end of our hour here together, so I'm going to ask you all to, again, tell the folks the name of your current title, give it its pitch line, and then tell us where we can find you on the web. You first, Dahlia.
Oh, wow. Well, my book is For Scottish Rogues, and you can find it on Amazon. You can find me at Dahlia Rose unscripted.com. That's my website. You can find me on Amazon, Twitter, Facebook. You can find me on the Tickety Talk, which makes my kids irate that I call it that, so I do it on purpose. And you can find me anywhere you like. I'm always available, and I love chatting, so just look out for me.
Great. And what is for the Highlands Rogue? Did I get that title right?
Yep.
Okay. What is the log line or the pitch line? What is your one sentence description of it?
Pirates of the Caribbean meets Highlander.
Cool. Okay, that's great. Now your turn, Jason.
I really suck at keeping up a website, so I'm not going to send you there. You can find all of my shit on Amazon. You can go to my Amazon author page, amazon.com/Jason Gilbert/author. You can just go to Falstaff Books and find the Cold Stone series there. The newest book and the final book in season 1 of Cold Stone is Wolf Heart. That's when everything comes to a head. And you can also find me on Facebook. I have an author page there that I keep up with occasionally, or you can just find me on my personal page where I'm pontificating or shit posting. And then I really need to get more into Instagram. So just go ahead and follow me and wait, because I have stuff coming for that too.
Okay, give me the one sentence description of Wolf Heart.
Of Wolf Heart?
Yes.
I will see. I haven't thought about Wolf Heart, but if I was going to say Wolf Heart, I would say that those little drinks that come with the umbrellas also come with a lot of blood and guts.
Okay, that works. All right, Jackie, name of the book, the one sentence description, and where folks can find you on the web.
Okay, the name of the book is called Blacksmith and the Ex-Con, and it's written by Jackie North. That's me. I have a website, www.jackienorth.com. I'm also on Amazon, and I would say the one sentence description, it's a sentence from the story itself. The characters are named Ellis and Jasper, and the sentence reads, if anybody ever needed him, Ellis did. Ellis was broken. Jasper liked to fix things.
Okay, that's cool. Andy, your turn. Title, one sentence description, where we can find you on the web.
So the title is Better to Believe. The one sentence description was, you can fall for your brother's best friend, just don't break his heart. You can find me on the web at andygallo.com. I have a Facebook reader group, which is Glorious Readers, which is GALLORIOUS Readers. And obviously we're on Amazon, and or just email me at andy@andygallo.com.
Okay, great. And Nancy, you get the final word. Don't say I never did anything for you. And give us the title again, the one sentence description, and where folks can find you on the web.
Well, I hate to be a rebel since you've done me this favor, but I don't have a one sentence description. I have a 3 sentence description.
Are they short?
Oh God, you rebel.
I know. But the current book is The Steel Rose, although you might understand it better if you read The Herald of Day, the first book first. The description of the series is a wizard's misplaced trust, a king wrongly blamed for murder, a bloodline cursed until they clear the king's name. Mm-hmm. And then both of these books are out there in KU. You can find them there. You can find me at nancynorthcott.com. I think I might be a little better than Jason about keeping up my webpage, but probably not Google's better. I spend more time than is good for me on Twitter, where I'm at Nancy Northcott, and you can connect with me there. And I have a Facebook author page, which is, facebook.com/Nancy Northcott author.
Okay, great. Well, thank you all, and I wish you all great sales with your new titles and with all of your work. And thank you out there for joining us here at ConTinual, the never-ending convention. Good night.
Night.
Thank you.
Read lots and listen to a lot of heavy metal music.